Millionaire gets mistakenly hugged by a poor girl, but her innocence changes everything. Before we begin the story, comment below which city you're watching from. Ethan Reed wasn't the kind of man who noticed sidewalk chaos. Not anymore. Not since he became a billionaire before 35. Not since he signed million-dollar contracts from the back seat of a Bentley. Not since life stopped surprising him. But that morning, something happened. He had just stepped out of his car, umbrella in hand, heading toward the upscale Midtown Conference Center where another investor breakfast awaited. Nothing about the day felt different until it did. Out of nowhere, a figure darted across the wet pavement, stumbling toward him. She was soaked, her boots uneven, her coat far too thin for November wind. And before his security could react, she threw her arms around him. "Lucas, I'm sorry, please don't be mad," she whispered, clutching him tightly. Ethan froze, his umbrella tilted, letting rain cascade over his expensive trench coat. But he didn't care. He didn't move. The girl trembled in his arms. Her voice was broken, breathless. Her fingers dug into the fabric of his suit, like she was trying to hold on to something slipping away. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, barely louder than the rain. "They tried to take my flowers again. I ran." Ethan's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Flowers. She smelled like them. Beneath the scent of wet streets and fear, there was something sweet. Wild daisies, maybe. And then she looked up. Her eyes widened in horror as she realized her mistake. "Oh God, you're not," she stepped back quickly, rainwater dripping from her hair. "I'm so sorry. I thought you were someone else." Ethan's umbrella slipped from his hand. He didn't bend to retrieve it. The girl shook her head, backing away. "I'm sorry, really. Please don't call the cops. I just needed to feel safe for 1 second." She turned, nearly slipping, and ran into the crowd. Gone. Ethan stood still. Around him, people rushed by, umbrellas bouncing, taxis honking. But all he could see was her face. That fear, that innocence. It was the most human thing that had touched him in years. He blinked and found something near his feet, a crumpled, wet piece of newspaper wrapping a single white daisy. He picked it up, held it longer than he meant to. 2 hours later, Ethan sat in a high-rise dining hall, surrounded by venture capitalists and CEOs. The table sparkled with silverware, conversation danced around stocks and crypto. He hadn't said a word. His mind kept replaying that moment, her voice, her eyes. Not her beauty, no. She wasn't dressed to impress. Her cheeks were hollow, hands rough, nails chipped. But her pain was real, raw. She hugged him thinking he was someone else, and it wasn't love, wasn't seduction. It was survival. It was trust, misplaced and heartbreaking. "Ethan," one of the executives interrupted, "your thoughts on Series B expansion?" He stared at his untouched coffee. "Excuse me," he said, standing abruptly. Phones paused mid-scroll. Forks froze. But he didn't care. Back in his office, he called Julia, his assistant. She was surprised to see him return before noon. "I need you to do something," he said, pulling the daisy from his pocket. She tilted her head. "Sir?" "Find every flower seller working near 42nd and Lexington, especially younger girls. Check shelter records, police logs, anything. For business?" Ethan looked at her. "No," he said quietly. "For someone I should have never let walk away." Across the city, Lily sat huddled under an awning behind a deli. Her little brother, Caleb, slept beside her, his tiny hand gripping her arm. She stared at the sidewalk, replaying her mistake again and again. How stupid could she be? Lucas had always worn a gray coat. He used to wait for her outside the market, pretending not to care, until the day he stopped showing up. Maybe he never meant to come back. She knew better than to hope. But that man, that stranger with kind eyes, he hadn't yelled. He didn't push her away. In those few seconds, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Safe. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat in his study, staring at the daisy and a crystal glass of water. One flower, and 1,000 questions. Who was she? Why did she run? And why did Ethan Reed, a man surrounded by models, wealth, and ambition, feel more alive from one broken hug than from every kiss he'd paid for? In the last 5 years? He didn't know, but he was going to find her, even if it meant walking every damn flower stall in Manhattan himself. Because deep inside, something had shifted, and nothing, no money, no murder could compare to the way her arms felt, like coming home. The next morning, Ethan was up before the sun. He hadn't slept. His thoughts had been a storm all night, circling around one thinger. The girl, the hug. The daisy still sat in a glass on his desk, its petals beginning to wilt. But something about it made him pause every time he looked at it. He picked up the phone. "Julia, did you find her?" His assistant's voice came through groggily. "It's barely 6 a.m., sir. We've checked every flower vendor registry, but she's not on any list. If she's selling without a license, she might be staying under the radar." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I want boots on the ground. Pay whoever you need. I want every street corner near Midtown watched today." "Yes, sir." He hung up and stared at the skyline as dawn slowly pushed against the clouds. The city was waking up, and so was something inside him. Across town, Lily wiped the sleep from her eyes and gently shook Caleb awake. He was cold, his small body curled beside hers in the alley behind the deli. The tarp they used to sleep under had torn in the night, and the cold crept in. "Hey," she whispered softly, brushing a curl from his forehead. "Time to get up, little bear." He groaned, but opened his eyes. "Are we gonna have breakfast today?" he asked sleepily. Lily's heart clenched. "Of course," she lied, helping him sit up. "We just need to sell a few more flowers, and then we'll get something warm. Maybe pancakes." Caleb grinned. "With syrup?" She smiled and nodded, but her throat tightened. She only had 3 daisies left, and her fingers were too numb to tie more together. They walked hand in hand through the quieter morning streets, stopping at busy intersections to hold out the flowers. Most people ignored them. Some looked right through her like she wasn't even there. But Lily kept smiling. For Caleb. Always for Caleb. By noon, Ethan had already sent 5 teams into the city. No one had seen a girl matching her description. He sat in the back of his black SUV, looking at passersby through tinted glass, scanning every face. Rain misted against the windows again. Then something made him sit up. At the corner of 45th and Madison, near a crowded cafe, he saw her. Or at least, he thought he did. A small figure in a faded coat stood under a bus stop, holding a bundle of white flowers. A child stood beside her, clutching her hand. "Stop the car," he barked. The driver slammed the brakes. Ethan threw open the door and stepped out, ignoring the rain. He approached slowly, unsure what he would say. The girl didn't notice him at first. She was too focused on trying to hand a daisy to a woman rushing past. "Ma'am, just $1, please." The woman waved her off. Then Lily turned her head. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Ethan stood there, rain dripping from his coat, heart pounding in his ears. Lily's eyes widened, her face paled. Caleb tugged her hand. "Lily?" She took a step back, but Ethan raised his hand, palm open. "I'm not here to scare you," he said calmly. "I just needed to see you again." Lily didn't speak. He stepped closer. "You hugged me by mistake," he said, voice soft. "But that moment it wasn't a mistake for me." Her lips parted slightly. "I thought you were someone else," she whispered. "I know," he said, "but I've thought about it every second since." Silence. She looked at Caleb, then back at him. "You don't have to pretend to care," she said flatly. "Rich people love playing rescue. It makes you feel better." Ethan frowned. "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" He hesitated. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But when you ran, it felt like something important was leaving. And I can't shake that." Lily's shoulders tensed. Her eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. I don't have time for rich men's guilt, she said, turning to walk away. Wait, please. She stopped. Ethan stepped forward and knelt beside Caleb. You hungry? He asked the boy gently. Caleb nodded shyly. Ethan stood and looked at Lily. Let me buy you both lunch. Nothing more. No expectations. Just, let me do this one thing. Lily studied him, torn. Then, finally, she nodded once. They sat in a quiet corner booth at a diner Ethan hadn't stepped foot in since college. Caleb devoured pancakes with syrup, his face sticky and joyful. Lily barely touched her food. She kept watching Ethan, trying to figure him out. You don't look like someone who eats here, she said finally. Ethan chuckled. I don't. Haven't in years. Then why bring us? He shrugged. You look like you needed something familiar, and I wanted to see you smile. She stared at him, eyes narrowing. You don't even know my name. You're right, he said. What is it? Lily. He smiled. It suits you. She didn't smile back. And you're? Ethan. Let me guess, Ethan Reed. The Ethan Reed. He blinked. How'd you? I read newspapers at the library when it's warm enough. I've seen your face on headlines. He leaned back. So you know what I am. I know what you have. I don't know who you are. That hit deeper than he expected. And yet, it felt fair. An hour later, they stepped outside. Caleb held a to-go bag with extra pancakes. Rain had stopped. Lily turned to him. Thank you. But this doesn't change anything. I know. I have a life phone you don't fit into. He nodded slowly. Maybe not. But if that ever changes. He handed her a card. Lily stared at it. She didn't take it. Don't pity me, she said. I don't. Then why? Ethan exhaled. Because, for 10 seconds, in the middle of a storm, someone held me like I mattered. And I haven't felt that in a long time. Lily looked away, and when she looked back, he was already gone. That night, as Lily tucked Caleb into the shelter cot, she noticed something in his jacket pocket. A folded napkin. Inside it, $200, neatly wrapped. She closed her eyes inside, and for the first time in months she didn't feel entirely alone. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the dusty windows of the shelter. Lily woke up early. Caleb was still asleep, curled beside her under a threadbare blanket. His little chest rose and fell peacefully, a rare sight. She reached over and brushed a piece of hair from his forehead. Then her eyes drifted to the folded napkin beside his pillow. $200. She hadn't touched it all night. She stared at it like it was a snake, coiled and quiet, waiting to strike. She didn't want to owe him anything. Ethan Reed. Even his name sounded like polished marble. A man from another world. A world where pancakes came with warm syrup and safety came without fear. But people like that didn't just help people like her. There was always a price. Always. Still, Caleb had eaten well for the first time in days, and that mattered more than her pride. She slipped the napkin into her coat pocket, just in case. Across the city, Ethan sat in his penthouse office, staring at the city skyline. He hadn't been able to concentrate all morning. Every email, every meeting, every chart felt distant, meaningless. He kept replaying Lily's voice in his head. I don't know who you are. The words clung to him like fog. He had spent his entire adult life making sure no one saw past the empire he built. And now, a girl with holes in her shoes had looked right through it, right into him. He rubbed his temples. Then his phone buzzed. Mr. Reed, Julia's voice came through. The board meeting starts in 20. Cancel it. A beat of silence. But I said cancel. He stood, grabbing his coat. There were more important things than quarterly reports. It took Ethan 2 hours to find her again. He searched every blot between the shelter and the flower stalls. Finally, near the corner of 5th and Ash, he spotted her. Lily was crouched next to a trash bin, piecing together damaged daisies from discarded bouquets. Her fingers were red from cold. Caleb sat beside her, humming to himself, tying stems into little knots. Ethan didn't approach right away. He just watched. Something about the scene broke him. He had seen billionaires beg for deals with less desperation. Then Lily used to salvage one more flower. Finally, He stepped forward. She didn't look up. If you're here to take the money back, I didn't spend it. He crouched beside her. I'm not. Then what? I wanted to talk. I told you this doesn't change anything. I know, he said softly. But maybe I don't want to change everything. Just help. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired, but still sharp. What do you want from me, Ethan? He hesitated. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small box. I brought something. She eyed the box with suspicion. He opened it. Inside was a pair of tiny sneakers. Blue, new, just the right size for Caleb. Lily's breath caught. I noticed his shoes yesterday, Ethan said. They were falling apart. She stared at the sneakers, lips pressed tight. Then she looked at Caleb, still sitting a few feet away, drawing flowers in the dirt with a stick. You can't keep doing this, she said quietly. You can't keep showing up with things we didn't ask for. I know, but I could not bring them. You're not responsible for us. No, he said, but I want to be helpful, not out of pity, because I care. Lily looked away. Why? Ethan was silent. Then he said, because you made me feel human again. She blinked. I don't need saving. I don't want to save you. I just want you to know someone sees you. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Caleb ran over, giggling. Lily, look, I made a bunny. He held up a mess of sticks and leaves shaped vaguely like an animal. Lily knelt, hugging him. Ethan smiled. Then he stood, dusting off his coat. Can I give you a ride somewhere? He asked. She didn't answer, but she didn't say no either. They rode in silence. Ethan didn't take them home. He brought them to a small community cafe he secretly funded in a quieter part of the city. No reporters, no photographers. He ordered soup. Caleb got cookies. Lily sat across from him, arms crossed. Why are you really doing this? She asked again. Ethan leaned forward. When I was a kid, he said, my dad used to leave for weeks. My mom would cry at night, but she always hugged me like everything was fine. That's what your hug felt like someone trying to protect you, even while falling apart. Lily stared. Then, slowly, her expression softened. Lucas was my neighbor, she said quietly. He used to bring us food when my mom got sick. I thought he'd come back. That's why I mistook you. I figured, Ethan said gently. He never came back. I'm not Lucas, Ethan said. But I'm not leaving, either. Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped lower, Ethan walked them back to the shelter. He handed her a card. My driver's number. If you ever need anything, no pressure. Lily took it this time. Thank you, she said, barely audible. And Lily, she looked up. I meant it. You don't owe me anything. But if you ever want a way out, I'll make sure you don't have to choose between pride and survival. She held his gaze, and for the first time, she didn't look like she wanted to run. That night, Lily sat by the window of the shelter, watching the lights flicker across the skyline. Caleb was already asleep in the bunk behind her. In her lap, the sneakers sat unopened. She hadn't put them on him yet. Not because she didn't trust Ethan, but because a part of her still didn't trust good things. She glanced at the card in her hand. It was just a number, but somehow it felt like a door. It had been 3 days since their last conversation. 3 long days. Ethan had waited. He told himself he wouldn't push. He didn't want to scare her away. But each day that passed, the weight of silence grew heavier. Until the 4th morning his phone finally buzzed. It was a text. Lily, is your offer still open? For help, not pity. He stared at the message for several seconds before replying. Ethan, yes, always. No hesitation. He sent his driver within the hour. Lily stepped out of the car holding Caleb's hand tightly. She looked different, not in appearance. She still wore the same coat, the same worn jeans. But there was something in her shoulders, tension, readiness to bolt. Caleb smiled the second he saw Ethan at the doorway. Mr. Ethan. Ethan knelt, offering a hand to the boy. Hey, buddy, good to see you again. Lily hung back, guarded. He turned to her. I didn't think you'd call. I didn't have much of a choice, she said honestly. Doesn't matter. I'm glad you did. He stepped aside. Come in. Just for lunch, no pressure. She hesitated before entering. The foyer of his penthouse was warm, elegant, but not flashy. Tasteful, neutral tones. A fireplace flickered in the background, filling the room with soft heat. Ethan had intentionally removed the signs of wealth that might overwhelm the hair-no servants in sight. No champagne laid out, just soup simmering on the stove and a cozy living room where Caleb could play. Lily looked around, clearly uncomfortable. This place doesn't feel real, she muttered. Ethan smiled. It doesn't feel real to me most days, either. Lunch was quiet at first. Caleb ate happily, curled into the sofa with a grilled cheese sandwich and a blanket. Lily picked at her food. Ethan waited. Finally, she spoke. We've been staying at the shelter on 38th. They're good people, but the place is loud. Caleb's been coughing at night. I needed a break. I'm glad you're here, Ethan said gently. You're both welcome anytime. Lily shook her head. This isn't a solution. It doesn't have to be. Not yet. She looked up. He took a breath. Stay here. For a while. You and Caleb. Just until you get your feet under you. Lily's fork froze midair. No, she said, instantly. Why not? Because I don't belong here. I don't want Caleb thinking this is normal, then having to go back to nothing. It doesn't have to be nothing. You don't get it, she said sharply. We survive on routines, on knowing where the next meal comes from. This is fantasy. It messes with your head. Ethan leaned forward. I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm offering you time, space, stability. And then what? You get tired of us. We overstay our welcome. Suddenly we're back on the street and Caleb thinks we did something wrong. Her voice cracked. Ethan's heart twisted. He reached across the table. Lily, I would never do that. You say that now. I mean it. Everyone means it. Until they don't. A long silence followed. Then she stood up. Thank you. For lunch. For the shoes. For everything. But we can't stay. Caleb looked up from the couch. Are we leaving? Lily forced a smile. Soon, baby. Ethan stood to. Lily, wait. If not for you, then for him. He deserves better. She turned. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't laid awake every night wishing I could give him more? Her voice rose quiet, but sharp. I work myself raw. I beg. I run. I dodge danger every day for that boy. Don't talk to me about what he deserves unless you're willing to see all of it. Ethan didn't flinch. I am willing, he said. Lily's eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them away. I can't be bought, she whispered. I'm not trying to buy you. Then stop offering things I can't repay. You already did, Ethan said. She frowned. What are you talking about? That day, when you hugged me. She froze. I didn't even know your name. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a machine. I felt like a man, like someone who could still be useful, real, human. Lily looked away, jaw tight. I didn't mean to, she said softly. I know. They stood in silence again. Then Ethan sighed. Okay, no pressure. Just take this. He handed her an envelope. What is it? Prepaid phone, a driver's contact, emergency numbers, and the name of a clinic where Caleb can get checked. No strings. Lily hesitated, then took it. Thank you, she said, her voice small. Caleb came over and grabbed her hand. Can we stay 5 more minutes? She looked down at him, torn, then back at Ethan. 5 minutes, she said. Ethan nodded. 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes turned into 2 hours. Caleb played on the rug with building blocks. Lily sat on the edge of the couch, finally drinking her tea. She still didn't speak much, but Ethan didn't need her to. He watched her glance around the room with quiet longing. The way she held Caleb tighter when he laughed. The way her eyes flicked toward the hallway every time she heard a sound like waiting for the other shoe to drop. It wasn't distrust. It was trauma. The kind he couldn't fix with money. Only with time. When they finally left, the doorman offered an umbrella. Ethan walked them out himself. As they reached the car, Lily paused. Why are you really doing this? He didn't answer immediately. Then, finally, Because if someone had helped my mother, maybe she wouldn't have cried so much. Lily stared at him. For once, she didn't have a response. She climbed into the car silently. Caleb waved as they pulled away. Ethan stood in the cold, watching them disappear into traffic. That night, as Lily tucked Caleb in at the shelter, she pulled out the envelope again. She opened the prepaid phone. There were only 2 numbers in it. One said, "Call me if it's too much." She stared at it, then shut the phone. But she didn't throw it away. She kept it under her pillow, just in case. It started with a cough. Just after midnight, Caleb woke up wheezing, his tiny frame shaking under the thin blanket. Lily jolted upright from the cot beside him. "Caleb, hey, sweetie, breathe slow. Breathe with me, okay?" His little hands clutched at his chest. His breaths came out like tiny whistles. Shallow in panic, Lily's heart slammed against her ribs. Not again. She fumbled for the flashlight and the inhaler she had stretched her last paycheck to refill. But it was almost empty, no one not working fast enough. Panic flooded her throat. She grabbed her coat, wrapped Caleb in it, and bolted out the shelter's side door. She didn't think. She just ran. By the time she reached the corner of 43rd and Sycamore, her fingers were frozen and her shoes were soaked. Caleb was burning up in her arms. She pulled out the prepaid phone from her pocket. Her hands trembled. She hesitated, then hit call. It rang once, twice, then, "Lily," his voice. "Ethan," she breathed, "to need help. Caleb's not breathing right. Please, I don't know what to do." "Where are you?" "Near the old post office, 43rd and I'm on my way. Stay there. Keep him warm. I've got you." Click. She held the phone to her chest for a moment, then pressed Caleb tighter. "I've got you," she whispered. Ethan arrived in less than 10 minutes. He hadn't even changed out of his sleek clothes, just threw on a coat and rushed out. When the SUV screeched to a halt, he jumped out before it fully stopped. "Lily." She stood under a flickering street lamp, cradling Caleb. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight to keep from falling apart. Ethan didn't hesitate. He took Caleb from her arms and guided her into the back seat. "I've already called the pediatricer at St. Luke's," he said. "They're waiting." She nodded, clutching Caleb's tiny backpack with white knuckles. At the hospital, everything blurred. Doctors moved quickly. Nurses took over. Oxygen tubes, machines, beeping. Lily stood frozen outside the room as they stabilized him. Her knees felt weak, her lungs tight. She hadn't realized she was crying until Ethan gently placed a hand on her back. She didn't move away. "He's going to be okay," he said softly. "They've got him." Lily closed her eyes, then slowly leaned into him. Just a little, just enough. They stayed in the hospital all night. Caleb, sedated and sleeping, hooked to monitors but stable. Lily sat by his bedside, hands clasped in her lap. Ethan didn't leave. He brought her coffee, sat in silence, made no demands. And somehow, that meant more than any offer of help he'd made before. Around 4 a.m., Caleb stirred. Lily leaned forward instantly. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm right here." Caleb blinked up, sleepy and dazed. Then his gaze shifted to the figure sitting across the room. His lips curled into a weak smile. "Daddy." The word was soft, barely audible, but it hit Lily like thunder. Her breath caught. Ethan sat still. He didn't react, didn't flinch, just looked at her. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her doesn't understand. "You've just been around, and he misses having someone. It's my fault." Ethan shook his head. "No, don't apologize. But it's not true. You're not." He stepped closer. "I know. But if he felt safe enough to say that, maybe that's not a bad thing." Lily looked away, cheeks flushed. "I don't want him confused." "Maybe he's not confused," Ethan said gently. "Maybe he just knows what love feels like. And maybe you both deserve more of it." Her shoulders shook, but she didn't respond. By sunrise, Caleb was asleep again. Lily stepped outside the hospital room for fresh air. Ethan followed. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "I'm sorry about earlier," she said, voice hoarse. He lost our dad really young. And then Lucas disappeared. I think he just needs something to hold on to. Ethan nodded. So do you? She glanced at him. I'm not asking you to be his father. I didn't think you were. But I can't let him get attached if this she motioned vaguely between them isn't real. Ethan stepped closer. And what if it could be? Lily's eyes flickered. She wanted to believe him, but her walls were still high and still solid. You don't know what it's like to lose everything. Yes, Ethan said quietly. I do. She frowned. He looked out at the early morning sky. I lost my mom to cancer when I was 16. My dad disappeared into his business. I grew up with money but no one to say goodnight to. I built this empire because I was afraid of being left behind again. He looked back at her. Until Caleb. The night your hardship reminded me what it's like to matter to someone. Lily swallowed hard. Her guard faltered, just for a second. But enough. Later that morning, Caleb was cleared to leave with medication. Ethan offered to drive them back. Lily hesitated, then said, just for today, just so he can rest. Ethan nodded. No questions, no pressure. When they arrived at the penthouse, the staff had already prepared a guest room with soft blankets, night lights, and even a small basket of toys. Caleb lit up the moment he saw the plush bunny on the bed. He grabbed it, curling into the covers. Lily stood in the doorway, unsure. Ethan didn't say a word. He just offered her a cup of tea. She took it and sat down. That night, she didn't leave. Neither did Caleb. For the first time in months, she let herself sleep on a real bed, next to her brother, under clean sheets. She held the bunny while he snored softly, and somewhere deep inside, something cracked, something softened. Ethan stood by the guest room door, watching them. His hand rested gently on the doorframe. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. But his eyes said it all. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Ethan moved through the dimly lit kitchen barefoot, pouring himself a glass of water. The city lights twinkled beyond the tall windows. But inside, all was still. Or so he thought. He turned and found her already sitting at the kitchen island. Lily, wrapped in a blanket, a half-empty mug of tea between her hands, her eyes rimmed with shadows. She hadn't touched the lights. Only the glow of the refrigerator and the muted city beyond offered any illumination. Ethan didn't startle. He just walked to the other side of the counter and leaned on his elbows. Couldn't sleep? He asked gently. She shook her head. Didn't want to. He waited. Let her speak first. After a pause, she whispered, He called you daddy. Ethan nodded. He's confused, she said, and I'm scared. He kept his gaze steady. I don't blame you. She met his eyes for a moment, then looked away. I know I should be grateful, and I am. But sometimes kindness feels harder to accept than cruelty. At least cruelty. I know what to do with that. Ethan stepped closer and took the seat beside her. You've had more than your share of it, he said. She gave a bitter chuckle. Yeah, that's one way to put it. Silence settled again, but not an uncomfortable one. Just cautious. Then, softly, Ethan asked, What happened to Caleb's dad? Lily took a long breath. She didn't answer right away. Instead, her fingers traced the rim of her mug, slow and deliberate. Then, he left before Caleb was born. Said he'd come back when I had things figured out. Whatever the hell that meant. Ethan's jaw tightened. Lily continued. I was 20, working night shifts at a diner and sleeping on a couch in a friend's apartment. When I found out I was pregnant, I was scared but also hopeful. I thought maybe, for once, something good would stay. She laughed, a sharp, dry sound. But he ran. Said he couldn't be tied down. Couldn't be with someone who couldn't even afford a crib. Ethan didn't speak. His fingers slowly closed around his glass. My mom had passed 2 years before. She went on. Cancer. We didn't have insurance. She died in a hallway waiting for a doctor. That hit Ethan like a blow to the chest. And my dad, she shook her head. He left when I was 13. Got remarried. Sent Christmas cards for a while. Then nothing. Her voice didn't tremble. She wasn't trying to be dramatic. She was just tired. I kept Caleb. Of course I did. Because even though everything in my life kept breaking, he was the one thing that felt like it was worth fighting for. She looked at Ethan then, and for the first time, there was no armor. Just raw truth. But I've been drowning ever since. Ethan's voice was low, steady. You've been surviving. She scoffed. Barely. No, Lily, look at me. She did. I've met people who crumble over lost deals and scratched cars. You've held up an entire life with nothing but your hands and your will. That's not barely. That's strength. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. No one had ever said that to her before. Not without expecting something in return. She blinked rapidly, then looked down at her tea. Sometimes I wonder if Caleb would have been better off with someone else. A foster family, maybe. Someone stable, someone not living out of shelters and chasing pennies. Ethan's voice hardened. Don't say that. She looked up, startled. He leaned in. You are the only constant in his life. The reason he smiles. The reason he's still safe. You're not the problem in his life. You're the anchor. Her breath hitched. She looked away fast, but not fast enough. He saw the tears slide down her cheek. I don't know how to accept this, she whispered. Any of it, you, this place, the warmth, the quiet. Then don't think of it as accepting, he said. Think of it as resting, just for a while. I don't rest, she said. Rest is when things fall apart. Not this time, Ethan said softly. Not with me. They sat in silence for several more minutes. Ethan poured her more tea without asking. She didn't stop him. Outside, the first light of morning began to creep through the skyline, softening the edges of night. Lily stared at the golden hue washing over the marble countertops. Then, quietly, she said, I used to dream about this. Ethan turned to her. This, not the penthouse, she clarified, lips quirking. The feeling of being seen, heard, not just endured. He swallowed hard. And now that it's here, she sighed. I'm terrified it'll vanish. It won't, he said without hesitation. You can't promise that. I just did. She looked at him again, longer this time, searching. Then, she stood, gathered the blanket tighter around her, and walked toward the hallway. But at the last second, she paused, turned, and said, Thank you for listening. He nodded. Always. She disappeared down the hall. Ethan sat there long after the tea turned cold. Something was happening. Slowly, but undeniably. She was letting him in, and somewhere down the hallway, Lily crawled back into bed beside Caleb. She stared at the ceiling, her heart heavy, her chest lighter. For the first time in years, she had spoken the truth, and someone hadn't turned away. They stayed. The invitation arrived days later. A sleek envelope, hand-delivered by Ethan's assistant, bearing golden script across the front. The Belmont Gala, an evening of elegance and charity. Lily stared at it like it was a bill she couldn't pay. What is this? She asked Ethan later that night. He leaned casually against the doorframe of the guest room, arms folded. An event, he said. Big annual fundraiser for children's hospitals. I'm on the board. She raised an eyebrow. And you want me to go? I do. Why? Ethan's voice softened. Because I want you beside me. Lily looked at him for a long time. I don't own anything elegant, she said finally, or anything that doesn't have holes in it. He grinned. I may have anticipated that. The next afternoon, a tailor arrived, then a stylist, then a woman named Carla who spoke in soft tones and carried a rack of gowns, like they were museum pieces. Lily stood stiff in front of the mirror as they pinned, tucked, and fluffed. She'd never worn silk before, never stood in shoes that weren't at least a little too small. She kept touching the price tag discreetly tucked inside the lining, more than she'd made in 6 months. She should have refused, but something about the way Caleb had lit up when he saw her dress you look like a princess, Lily, had made her stay. And Ethan? He didn't gawk, didn't grin. He simply looked at her like she belonged there. The gala was held at the Grand Manhattan Conservatory, a glass and marble palace that shimmered under chandeliers and champagne laughter. The room was filled with people who lived in a world where everything sparkled, and nothing was ever just enough. Ethan walked in beside her, tux tailored to perfection, hand lightly on the small of her back. She felt everyone's eyes the moment they entered, and not all of them were kind. It started subtly. The way women in gowns glanced her up and down, their smiles too thin, too polite. The way someone whispered, "Is that Ethan Reed's date?" followed by a chuckle and a sip of something expensive. Then came the confrontation. They were by the hors d'oeuvres table when a woman in red silk approached. Tall, immaculate, dripping with diamonds. "Ethan," she purred. "It's been far too long." Ethan smiled politely. "Evening, Vanessa." Vanessa turned her gaze to Lily, sharp and glinting. "And who's this?" "This is Lily," Ethan said, voice steady. "She's with me." Vanessa extended a hand, her lips curled in fox warmth. "What a refreshing choice." Lily shook her hand briefly. "I don't think we've met," Vanessa continued, sipping her wine. "What do you do, dear?" Lily opened her mouth, then closed it, because what was she supposed to say? "I sleep in shelters and sell flowers on street corners." Ethan stepped in. "She's raising her little brother," which is more than most people in this room have done for anyone. Vanessa's smile stiffened. "How noble," she said, before gliding away. Lily stood frozen, heat rising in her cheeks. Later, on the terrace, she stood alone by the railing. The city stretched below her, glittering and indifferent. Ethan found her there 10 minutes later. "You disappeared," he said gently. She didn't turn. "I didn't belong in there." "You did." "They don't think so." "I don't care what they think." "Well, I do," she snapped, finally turning. Her eyes blazed. "I stood there like a mannequin while they looked at me like dirt under crystal heels. And I let them. Because I didn't want to embarrass you." Ethan's expression tightened. "You think I brought you here to impress them. I think you brought me here to prove something. That you could polish up a poor girl and parade her like a rescued stray. That's not fair." "No, it's not," she said, voice cracking. "None of this is fair. I don't know who I am when I stand next to you in a ballroom. I don't know who you are when you're shaking hands with people who mock me." Ethan stepped closer. "I'm the same man who watched you sleep in a chair beside your brother. Who brought you tea at 2 a.m. Who sees you, Lily? Every version of you, not just the one in that dress." She looked away, jaw trembling. "I can't do this," she whispered. "Can't do what?" "Be a prop in your life. A story you get to tell later about how you helped the girl with nothing." Ethan's voice dropped. "You think that's what this is?" She didn't answer. So he said, "Then come with me, right now." She blinked. "What?" "No more gowns, no more galas. Just come with me. Let me show you who I really am when no one's watching." He took her hand, led her out through a side door, down a private hallway, out into the street where a second car was waiting, quieter, unmarked. He didn't say a word as they drove. Neither did she. Not until they pulled up in front of a modest brownstone in a quiet neighborhood in Brooklyn. "Whose house is this?" she asked. "Mine," he said. "Not the penthouse." He shook his head. "This was my mother's. I kept it after she passed. I come here when I need to breathe." He unlocked the door. Inside was warmth, simplicity, photos of his childhood, worn books, a teapot still on the stove. "This is me," Ethan said, "the part no one sees." Lily looked around slowly. No marble, no gloss, just real. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked. "Because I needed you to know. I'm not rescuing you." He stepped closer. "I'm letting myself need you." Her breath hitched, but this time, she didn't step away. The next morning, the rain came hard. Sheets of it beat against the windows of the brownstone, wind howling like something alive. Lily sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee cradled between her palms, watching the storm through the fog glass. Ethan hadn't come downstairs. She glanced at the clock. 9:14 a.m. Too late for a man who usually moved like he was racing the sun. She padded up the wooden staircase quietly. The door to his bedroom was ajar. Inside, the room was dim, heavy with stillness. Ethan lay curled in the sheets. sweat dampening his hairline, face pale. "Ethan," she said softly, stepping closer. He stirred, barely. "And I'm not now." She crossed the room, gently pressed her hand to his forehead and froze. He was burning, a fever, deep and rising fast. "Ethan," she said, firmer this time. "Hey, look at me." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Lily, I'm here." He blinked slowly. "Feels like I got hit by a truck." She touched his cheek. "You're sick." He chuckled weakly. "Figures, one normal night and my immune system bails on me." Lily didn't smile. She turned on the lamp, checked his pulse, then disappeared down the hall. When she returned, her arms were full wet towels, aspirin, a thermometer, water. She moved with quiet precision, like she'd done this 100 times. Because she had, when Caleb had bronchitis. When she'd worked double shifts with the flu, she didn't freeze in crisis. She functioned. By mid-afternoon, the fever had climbed higher. Ethan lay half-conscious, murmuring nonsense between bouts of shivering. She stayed beside him, changing the cloth on his forehead, coaxing sips of water between cracked lips. At one point, he gripped her wrist weakly. "Don't go," he murmured. She paused. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered, and meant it. Night fell. The storm grew worse. But inside, the brownstone was warm with lamplight and quiet care. Lily hadn't left the room in hours. She sat curled on the edge of the bed, watching Ethan breathe. Every time he stirred, she was there. And slowly, something strange began to bloom in her chest. Not fear, not duty, but a calm. A sense of doing something, of mattering, not for survival, but for someone else's comfort. She had spent so long needing help, she'd forgotten what it felt like to give it freely, to be strong in someone else's weakness. She looked at Ethan's wet-soaked, vulnerable, quiet, and realized she wasn't scared. Not of this. Not anymore. By midnight, his fever finally broke. She could feel it in the way his breathing evened out. The color returned faintly to his cheeks. She exhaled, long and shaky, then laid the cloth aside. Her muscles ached. Her eyes burned. But she didn't move, didn't want to, because her at this quiet room, this fragile man, this shared silence I felt more like home than any shelter ever had. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains. Ethan stirred. His voice was hoarse. "Lily?" She was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the chair beside the bed. She smiled faintly. "Welcome back." He blinked. "What happened?" "You lost a battle with your own immune system." He chuckled and winced. She stood and poured him a glass of water. "You were delirious," she said, at one point. "You tried to sell me stock in a company called Soup and Hope, LLC. He laughed again, softer this time. "I must have liked you a lot." She raised an eyebrow. "You told me I had better bedside manners than most of your investors." "That sounds accurate." She handed him the water. Their fingers brushed. He didn't let go right away. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You don't need to." "I do." He sat up, weak but alert. "You stayed." "I always do," she said. "That's kind of my thing." Ethan stared at her, really stared. "You're not who I thought you were." Lily tilted her head. "Who did you think I was?" "Someone surviving," he said. "But you're more than that. You're someone who holds everything together when it's falling apart, even people like me." Her throat tightened. She looked away. "I didn't do anything special." "Yes," he said. "You did. You stayed when you could have walked. That's more than most ever do." Later, as Ethan rested, Lily made her way downstairs. She moved through the brownstone like it was her own. She cleaned up the dishes, made fresh soup, laid out clean towels, opened the windows to let the storm slick air in. She didn't ask permission. She didn't wait to be thanked. She simply acted, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a guest. She felt like a woman, a partner, someone needed, someone with a place. That evening, Ethan came downstairs slowly, bundled in a robe. He found her on the couch, reading a book Caleb had left behind. He sat beside her. She didn't move away. He said, "You could have left a note and walked." "I didn't want to. I don't think I've let anyone see me like that," he said, "not in years." "You look like you needed someone to," she replied. He looked at her, then reality looked, and said, "Stay here with me. For real, you and Caleb, not as guests, not as charity, as family." Lily's breath caught. I don't know if I can promise that," she said. "I'm still scared." "I am too," he said. "But I'd rather be scared beside you than brave alone." Silence settled between them. Heavy, warm. Then Lily did something unexpected. She reached out and took his hand, held it tightly, and didn't let go. It had been 3 days since the storm. 3 quiet days of recovery. Lily and Caleb had settled into a routine. Ethan's late breakfasts, Caleb's giggles echoing through the brownstone. Small moments that felt more real than a boardroom full of million-dollar deals. Until the afternoon the intruder arrived. Ethan was in the kitchen, checking Caleb's drawings on the fridge, stick figure bunnies and flowers when the doorbell rang. He glanced at Lily. Outside, Julia, his assistant, greeted a woman in a gray coat. She looked out of place in the brownstone hallway, to polished, to purposeful. Ethan frowned as he approached. "Julia, let her in." The woman stepped inside. Her voice was smooth, controlled. "Mr. Reed," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Margaret Stone. We knew your mother quite well." Ethan froze. Lily bristled beside him. Margaret moved closer. "I heard you've met someone new." She nodded toward Lily. "And thought you'd like to know some details about the past." Ethan's jaw tightened. He dropped his gaze. Lily took a step back, studying the woman. Margaret smiled, tone polite but cold. "Your mother, Claire Reed, didn't die of cancer," she said quietly. Ethan's breath caught. Lily's eyes turned to his face. She reached for his arm, but he pulled it away, stiff and shaking. "She was killed," Margaret continued, voice steady. "An accident. A car crash. But the driver never stopped." Ethan swallowed hard. Tears pricked at the back of his eyes. Lily closed her mouth. The room felt smaller. Margaret looked at her curiously. "And Miss Chelsea Flower, your brother's nanny, blamed the neighbors, blamed bad breaks, blamed everything but the truth." Ethan's world tilted. "My mother, not cancer." Margaret nodded. "This wasn't made public. It belonged to the family. But I believed you deserved the truth." Silence. Lily glanced between them. For the first time, she felt the fragility of his empire. Ethan stepped forward, voice raw. "Why now?" Margaret smiled thinly. "You've changed. You've opened your doors. You've welcomed outsiders. And she deserved to understand what you were before she found you." Lily looked down, heart pounding. She squeezed Ethan's chair. Ethan's voice cracked. How could no one tell me?" Margaret shrugged. "There are secrets rich people keep, some to protect, some to bury. But the truth always surfaces." Lily swallowed hard. Tears blurred her vision. Ethan turned away. He paced the kitchen, uncertainty clouding his expression. Lily followed silently. She didn't know what to say. The world outside felt distant. All the paintings, the drawings, the decisions, these seemed to fade. Because everything changed in that moment. Ethan's voice echoed, quiet. "Why didn't she tell me?" Margaret leaned against the counter. "She was protecting you, saying it was cancer. It made people more sympathetic, more respectful. The truth would haunt you." Ethan closed his eyes, head bowed. Lily wrapped her arms around herself. Caleb sat quietly, unaware. Then Margaret turned to Lily, addressing them both. "My condolences. I didn't come here to hurt. I came so you could decide how to live knowing the whole story." She nodded once and left. Julia quietly closed the door. Silence followed, heavy, endless. Lily's chest tightened. She exhaled slowly. Ethan looked at her, eyes red. "This is my fault," he whispered. She shook her head. "No, everything I built was built on a lie." "You didn't lie." "But I never questioned it," he said. "I accepted the story I was told." Lily stepped close. This doesn't define you." He looked at her. "I don't even know who I am now," he admitted. Lily reached up, gently turned his face toward hers. You're the man who brought my son cookies at midnight, took care of him, and let him feel safe. That's who you are." He inhaled sharply. Tears rolled slowly down his cheek. He gathered them thoughtfully and Caleb into an embrace. "I don't know how to be the man she wanted me to be," he said, "but I want to be the man you need." Lily closed her eyes. Caleb reached out, hugging them both. 3 hearts tangled by loss, by love, by newly whispered truths. The next morning, Ethan stood at the window, dressed, pale, but steady. Lily joined him. He handed her a folded photo. It was Claire Reed, smiling a rare picture, barefoot in a garden. "She loved daisies," he murmured. Tears filled her eyes. They didn't need words anymore. They simply stood, together. And for the first time since the secret broke, all the walls between them faded. Because some truths don't destroy. They aligned hearts. It was 2 nights later when she appeared. The knock came at the door of the brownstone sharp, deliberate. Ethan opened it, and there she stood, tall and confident, in a black sheath dress that whispered and commanded attention before she even spoke. Vivian Clark, his ex-fiancée. Lily sat quietly in the living room with Caleb, coloring at the small table Ethan had set up for him. She didn't look up at first, but she sensed the shift when Vivian entered like she owned the place. Ethan closed the door behind her, entering the room with tension vibrating in the air. Vivian's eyes landed on Lily, a slow, predatory smile. "So this is her." Lily looked up, calm. "Miss Clark." Vivian's gaze narrowed. Ethan stepped between them. "Vivian, this isn't the time." Vivian pressed a finger to her lips, mocked silently, then turned back to Lily. "How sweet, you've got him playing chauffeur and cook." Heat rose in Lily's chest. Ethan interrupted quietly. "Vivian, what do you want?" Vivian turned to him, voice silk cut steel. "I came to remind you there's a world you belong in, and to ask what you're doing with her." She tilted her head at Lily. He felt Lily's grip tighten on Caleb's little hand. Ethan's jaw clenched. Vivian continued. "You've built an empire, family name, money, legacy. And here you are living in Brooklyn with a stranger." Lily's shoulders straightened. "He's not a stranger to us," she said softly. Vivian laughed, cold. "Please, you think he stays for a few cookies and a free dress. You're neither his ambition nor his distraction." Ethan's eyes flashed. "I have nothing left to prove to you. But don't pretend you're doing this for her." Vivian persisted. "You're doing it to prove something to yourself, that you're better than who you were." Lily stood. She drew in a breath. She looked at Ethan, and then back at Vivian. "My life didn't begin or end because of you," Lily said quietly. "I've worked harder in these past few months than anyone in that ballroom. Yet here I am, feeding your child, protecting him, and somehow you think I'm less." Vivian's smile flickered. Ethan placed a hand on Lily's arm, not to stop her, but to steady. He looked at Vivian. This isn't her story to tell or decorate. Vivian turned back to him. "It always will be. We know each other." Ethan stepped forward. "So do I." She paused. Lily cleared her throat. "I'm not here to play backup for a fairy tale, Miss Clark. I'm here because Free or Noti found a home with someone who actually sees me." Vivian smiled back, small and teeth-baring. "And one day you'll walk away, won't you? You're not built for this life. You're too loud, too hopeful, too wrong." Lily didn't flinch. "You're wrong about everything." Ethan gently removed Lily's hand from Vivian's path and stood between them. He looked at his ex. "This stops now." Vivian exhales, then swept past them with cat-like grace. "Don't forget who you are, Reed." She walked out. The door clicked shut. Silence. Lily exhaled, letting the tension drain from her shoulders. Caleb looked up. "Is she gone?" Ethan nodded. Lily stood close to him. He braced himself. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed, soft then stronger. A release. Ethan frowned, momentarily confused. But then he understood. It wasn't bitterness. It was freedom. Later that night, Ethan and Lily stood at the front steps, watching the lights of the brownstone glow behind them. "Thanks," he said quietly. "For what?" "For doing that. For standing up." She breathed deep, then whispered, "I didn't invite myself here. You invited us. And I figured maybe it was time to stop feeling small in your world, just because someone else tried to make me feel that way." He reached for her hand. She squeezed back. Caleb, yawning, tugged at her hem. "I'm sleepy, Mommy." She smiled. That's when Ethan looked at Lily, really looked, and said, "Make him breakfast tomorrow." She chuckled, "Only if you make the coffee, and we'll all do it together." Later, as Ethan locked the door, he paused, hand on the knob. He turned to Lily. "You ever doubt yourself? Remember tonight." She nodded, head resting on his shoulder. In her room, Lily knelt beside Caleb's bed. He slept, exhausted from drama and toddler life. She tucked him in, kissed him gently, then opened the envelope Ethan had given her earlier. A card lay inside, a note in simple handwriting. "You've never been less than me." She ran her fingers over the words, and finally, let herself believe it. That night, for the first time in years, she slept without armor. And Ethan, he stayed awake a little longer, watching, guarding, and making sure she knew this wasn't a charity. This was love. The next morning, Lily woke to soft light filtering through the curtains. Caleb was already awake, perched at the kitchen island, drawing with crayons. The small table was full of energy. She walked in wearing Ethan's robe, oversized and warm. "Good morning, little bear," she said softly. He smiled up. "Good morning, Mommy." Her heart skipped. Downstairs, Ethan entered with 2 steaming mugs of tea. Across from him, Julia, his assistant, stood beside a small table covered in flyers and stationery. Lily looked at her curiously. Julia cleared her throat. "Ethan mentioned you might want to join the board meeting for the new Belmont Children's Foundation initiative," she said. "It's a project to provide free pediatric screenings and tutoring in underfunded neighborhoods." Lily's breath caught. Ethan glanced at her. She returned the look. Julia offered her a seat. Lily hesitated, then slid into a chair. Julia handed her a packet. Inside, budgets, timelines, partnership proposals. Later, in the small conference room, Ethan and Julia observed quietly as Lily spoke. First softly, offering ideas, a mobile clinic schedule, working with local schools, cultural sensitivity training for volunteers. Then stronger, when someone hesitated at cost estimates, Lily challenged, "Do we value cost over lives? Because one prevented illness saves far more than early balance sheets." The room fell still. Eyes shifted. Some nodded. Some crossed arms. But Ethan saw her. Really saw her. After the meeting, the quiet lobby felt charged. Julia played a voicemail on speaker. A sponsor had pulled funding, reconsidering because some board members questioned the feasibility of Ms. Lily as a public face of the initiative. Lily listened without flinching. Ethan gently moved in front of the speaker. "When you judge her contributions, not her past." Julia cleared her voice, pressing record. Miles away, sponsors and board members went on record supporting Lily's nomination. That evening, Lily was dressed simply, jeans, a cozy sweater. Ethan appeared beside her, leaning against the frame of the door. He asked, "How do you feel?" She paused, sipping her tea. "Terrified," she admitted. He exhaled. "Then maybe fear means you're doing something right." She looked at him. His eyes were steady, proud. They stood on the terrace overlooking the city. A wind whipped around them, crisp and bracing. "You don't need to pretend," Lily said. He nodded. I want people to know who you really are, the way I do." She turned to him. "You always see the mess and the strength, not just the broken parts." He smiled softly. "You've changed how I see my own life." That night, sitting by Caleb's bedside, Lily opened her journal. She scribbled a line. "Today I realize I deserve more than survival. I deserve a life." She paused, then added, "Thank you, Ethan." The next day, at their small kitchen table, they reviewed designs, logos, event themes, outreach flyers with Lily's input. Caleb played with blocks nearby. Lily worked without fanfare, but with fire. Ethan watched and without thinking reached for her hand. She squeezed it gently. That evening, They dined at a small local diner. Comfort food, unpretentious. Ethan raised his glass. To new beginnings. She smiled, quiet, real. To beginnings, she echoed. She looked at him, truly, and saw a life she could belong to, a person who belonged to something deeper now because of her. The week rolled on in a blur of meetings and site visits. But something fell off. Lily began noticing hushed conversations in hallways. Emails marked confidential left open on unlocked computers. And a misaligned invoice for medical supplies that she'd only paired with genuine quotes. In the foundation binders. One morning, Julia pulled her aside. "We might have a problem," she whispered, nervous. "There's a board member showing reluctance in allocating funds to the mobile clinics in low-income neighborhoods, and rumors he's demanding personal favors. It's been hushed up so far." Lily's heart clenched. She swallowed before asking, "Do you know who?" Julia hesitated. "Maybe. But it's above my pay grade." That evening, at the brownstone, Ethan and Lily reviewed outreach maps and budget spreadsheets. Lily paused mid-swipe. "Ethan," she said, "there's a discrepancy in the Northside Clinic's vendor list compared to the budget. Doctors aren't showing up as vendor sign. But the money is gone." He looked up sharply. Together, they opened the documents they had printed. Lily's finger traced row after row of missing receipts and inflated figures. "Someone is padding this," she said, "or misreporting, and it's deliberate." Ethan closed the laptop. His expression darkened. The next morning, they called Julia into a meeting. Seated across from Ethan, Julia slid a manila folder forward. Inside, internal emails, invoices, and scanned receipts with forged signatures. A name appeared twice. Board member 4. He had insisted the money for supplies be sent to his private clinic, rather than vetted vendors despite lacking clear justification. Julia added, voice trembling, "He's denying it. But more doctors on staff say they've never seen the shipments." Ethan's fist clenched beneath the table. He nodded. "I want a full audit, discreet, and I don't want this leaking to press, not yet." Lily stayed late, analyzing details. Her eyes stung not from exhaustion, but betrayal. She'd accepted a place here, despite everything. Then she realized, if she stayed silent now, it meant she was complicit. She lifted her phone and sent a message. "We need to be transparent with our donors. I want to speak at the board meeting." At the next board meeting, Lily sat next to Ethan, facing the rest of the trustees. She cleared her throat. "Good morning. I've gathered documentation that suggests one of our board members has misappropriated funds meant for pediatric clinics in underserved neighborhoods." Voices shifted uneasily. She continued quietly, firmly presenting evidence, email threads, and inconsistencies. A hush filled the room. Finally, the stern man in his 60s spoke. "How do you suggest we proceed?" Lily held her ground. "An independent third-party audit, public transparency to donors, and replace board members if necessary." The trustees exchanged glances. Approval buzzed low. Ethan placed his hand, lightly, on her ankle. She held it. Back in the lobby, whispers trailed them. Some were critical. Who is she to stand up? Others were supportive. Finally, someone has guts. Ethan looked at Lily, eyes raw pride. Weeks passed. The audit confirmed the misappropriation. Board member for resigned quietly. Funds were redirected. Clinics opened. Thomas, one of the pediatricians, came to Lily and said, "Without you, this never would have been uncovered. You saved kids' lives today." Lily's gaze flickered. She felt seen. That evening, Ethan joined her in the brownstone kitchen. They cooked pancakes together for Caleb. She laughed as syrup dripped down his forehead. He watched her quietly, then said, "You did more than just save a project. You saved us from compromise." She paused. "I'm just trying to do good." He reached out, and that alone changes everything. Later, Lily opened her journal again. "I almost left because I didn't feel safe. Now I wouldn't leave because I can't be quiet," she added. "I deserve a seat not because someone gave it, but because I earned it." Ethan poured her tea, touched her hand. "We're building something real," he said. Lily looked at the skyline through the window. And I finally believe I belong, she whispered. It had been 2 weeks since the scandal resolved. Personally and institutionally, life had somehow settled. Clinic vans rolling through neighborhood streets, board members realigned, trust tentatively rebuilt. Lily's heartbeat had slowed until she received a message from a number she recognized, buried in memory. Lily, I need you. Call me. It was from Marisol, the woman who had once risked her own safety to drive Lily and Caleb to a shelter. After that night Lucas vanished, Lily stared at her phone. Her chest tightened. That life felt moth-eaten now, fragile memories of desperation and fear. But it was still part of her. That evening, Ethan returned from a board meeting full of optimism. He found Lily at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. Everything okay? He asked. She looked up. Marisol messaged me. Ethan leaned in. Marisol? From before? She nodded. I haven't spoken to her in years. I can drive you to see her, he offered quietly. Lily swallowed. I don't know if I want to reopen that chapter. Ethan touched her arm gently. I'll go with you, if you want. That Friday afternoon, they drove to a rundown neighborhood across town where Marisol lived now. The street smelled of rain and asphalt, of closed-down storefronts and chatter from open windows. Lily got out with Caleb. The door opened before she knocked. Marisol stood there, older than Lily remembered, face lined by years of worry and kindness. Lily, she whispered. Thank God. Inside, the apartment was tight, a single room with peeling wallpaper. She made coffee from instant packets and served it in mismatched mugs. They sat across from each other at a small formica table. Marisol smiled, warily. I didn't know where else to go, Marisol began. Lily nodded. I remember. Marisol's voice shook. I was attacked recently. Lost my job. I can't pay rent. Homeless again. Lily's breath caught. Marisol looked at her with pleading eyes. I helped you. I kept you alive. Could you help me now? The room seemed to tilt. Everything Lily had fought for. But this, reality. Lily turned her head to see Ethan quietly standing in the corner of the room. He nodded, gently. You're not alone, he whispered. Lily exhaled. The choice pressed like ice. Option 1. Give them shelter in the brownstone up indoors again. Risk destabilizing what she had built for Caleb. Option 2. Walk away. Maintain boundaries. Leave Marisol to her fate. Lily inhaled, looked at Marisol, and said quietly, I'll help you find somewhere safe. Later, walking her out, Lily handed Marisol cards. One listed local shelters with availability. One had Ethan's contact, and Lily gave her $500, not charity, but opportunity. Marisol took it, tears gathering. Thank you, she whispered. In the car, silence stretched. Caleb sat in the back, quiet. Ethan looked over. You did the right thing? Lily closed her eyes. I hope so. He placed his hand over hers. That night in the brownstone, she lay in bed with Caleb sleeping beside her. She stared at the ceiling, heart-torn. Ethan came in, sat beside her. You brought her here? She shook her head. I didn't, but I gave her something to keep going. He nodded. You're becoming the person you always said you wanted to be. The next morning, Lily received another message. Thank you. I found a room, a job. You saved me. She showed it to Ethan. He smiled softly. She did it. Lily nodded. And not because I sheltered her, but because you gave her a chance. At breakfast, Caleb slid across the table and hugged her. Mama, you're the best helper. Lily took a breath and looked at Ethan. He lifted a spoonful of pancakes toward Caleb. And you're the best mama. Their eyes met. There was no illusion now, no expectation, just shared meaning. That afternoon, at the Belmont Clinic van launch ceremony, Lily spoke quietly into the microphone. I stand here not only for my son, but for everyone who ever extended a hand when they didn't have to. Because kindness sparked a chain reaction that saved children's lives. Applause rose, but when she looked at Ethan, his face held not pride but deep love. She stepped down. He met her halfway. They hugged, together. That night in the apartment, he played Caleb his favorite bedtime story. Lily stood in the doorway, watching them. Ethan turned and touched her arm gently. "You're home." Lily nodded, softly. "I always wanted that." It was spring. The city awakened in soft shades of green and golden sunlight. Ethan had arranged a press luncheon at the Belmont Foundation. The media would cover the expansion of the mobile clinics, an introduction of new funding initiatives. Lily watched from the side, leaning against the wall in a simple dress. Caleb held her hand, quietly clutching. The presentation flowed smoothly. Data on community impact, smiling children, momentary applause. Then Ethan stepped to the podium. His gaze swept the room and locked on Lily. He took a breath. "Before I announce the next board initiative," he began, voice steady, "I'd like to say something personal." A hush filled the tent. He continued, "When I first met Lily, she was selling a single daisy on the sidewalk. I had never felt more alive." A wave of surprise rippled through the audience. "Since then," he said, his eyes on Lily, "she's become more than a partner in this foundation. She's the reason I want to be better, not for image, not for legacy, but for her, and for my son." Gasps. Lily's chest tightened. He stepped down from the stage, walked to her. Taking her hand in front of every journalist and board member, he said clearly, "This is Lily. She's not my guest. She's a vision of hope, courage, and truth. I want her by my side not because she needs me, but because I need her in my life, in our family." Publicly, camera flashes exploded. Lily blinked, stunned, but something shifted deep in her. They stayed hand in hand, unblinking, as the reporters turned their attention. Questions hurled. "Is this true? Are you proposing something more?" Ethan nodded. "To every own eyes, we are building something real, not the press release version. Something that matters." Lily's lips quivered, but when Ethan pulled her into a gentle embrace, she leaned in. She looked up through the lens of 1,000 cameras. Her eyes found his. They saw clarity. Later, after the luncheon, guests whispered in clusters. Some praised their courage. Others sneered that Ethan had fallen for a charity case. But Lily didn't care. She stood beside him, quiet but steady. That evening, at home in the brownstone, Caleb asked, "Mommy, is it okay that people talked about us?" Lily smiled, brushing his hair. "Yes, baby, because we told the truth." Ethan joined them at the kitchen island. He poured them warm cocoa. Lily looked at him. He said softly, "You were never a charity. You're my choice." She choked up, "Thank you." His hand settled over hers. That night, she wrote in her journal, "Today, he introduced me truthfully to his world, not as a story, but as a future." She paused. "I finally feel like I belong in it because someone rescued me, but because someone chose me." The next morning, visits to clinics began again. Lily accompanied Ethan to the van in Northside. Children waved, parents hugged, volunteers cheered. He watched her speak to a young mother, offering a folder of resources. Her voice was calm, warm, unafraid. He thought of all the boardrooms where her name had been whispered. Then he looked at her again, and for the first time, he saw a woman fully seen. That night, as they tucked Caleb into bed, Ethan whispered, "You changed everything." She lay back, eyes soft, "Because we chose each other." He kissed her forehead. She closed her eyes. In the brownstone kitchen, full of quiet contentment, she turned to him. "Ethan." He nodded. "I want us, not just open doors, not just opportunities. I want us." He pulled her into a hug. 1,000 times yes. And somewhere between bedtime stories and morning light, between press luncheons and stolen breakfasts, the word belonged found its home for both of them. The first day of summer arrived with sun pouring through the brownstone windows, lighting the kitchen like a promise. Caleb danced around the table, finger painting daisies with his new art set. Lily watched him, smiling, while Ethan made coffee. It felt ordinary, and yet everything had changed. By late morning, an official photographer arrives by Belmont Foundation to capture a story. From sidewalk to stability, a family's new chapter. Caleb grinned at the camera. Lily wore a dress lighter than silk, something she'd never imagined herself in, but looked real. Ethan held both of their hands. Home. Later, they drove to Northside Clinic Hub. Volunteers and children cheered as the ribbon cutting showed the final mobile clinic fully equipped. Lily stood beside Ethan. He whispered, "This is because of you, Lily." She looked at him, not tearful, just proud. "Because of us." They shared a glance and together pushed the ribbon aside. That afternoon, news outlets highlighted their story. Some praised, some questioned it, but their foundation emerged stronger. A video aired, Lily speaking to a group of mothers, gentle but commanding. Under her line scroll, "Your dignity is not defined by circumstance." Ethan watched, emotion caught tight in his jaw. Back at home, Julie arrived with mail. Lily opened a letter invitation to speak at a national symposium for women leaders. Her eyes filled. "Soft." Ethan stood close. "Want to do it?" She nodded almost breathlessly. "I want those girls, little girls who look like Meadow knows something." Later, Ethan and Lily sat together in the quiet living room. Evening light mellowed everything. Ethan said gently, "You've earned every offer, not because I give them, because you deserve them." She leaned closer. "Thank you," she whispered. Their hands found each other. That night, as Caleb slept between them under a soft blanket, Lily closed her journal. She read the words she had written over the past weeks. "I belong. I am worthy. I can be loved." She looked at Ethan, his breathing even, peaceful. She kissed his hand. They dreamed together. The next morning, Ethan surprised them by canceling his board meetings. Instead, he took them to Central Park to sit under the daisy tree, her favorite. They sat on a blanket, a picnic basket between them. Caleb giggled, chasing pigeons. Lily closed her eyes and leaned against Ethan. Ethan looked at her, voice soft. "Let's stay here, all day." She nodded. "You're home," he said. She smiled. "You are too." As the sun set behind skyscrapers, they packed up and walked hand in hand to the car. Ethan glanced back once, at the tree where Caleb had first painted daisies, at Lily, at the promise they had built together. Weeks later, on the Foundation's website, a new photo appeared, the three smiling, genuine. Underneath, the caption, "Together, we're planting hope." Emails flooded in, volunteers, parents, women survivors. Lily looked at them all that night. She whispered, "We did it." Ethan pressed a soft kiss to her temple. Caleb yawned. In the brownstone bedroom, as she closed the door behind Ethan and Caleb, Lily stood at the window a while. The city lights twinkled. She thought of the first daisy he had picked up from her, of nights in shelters, of fear, of love. She closed her eyes. When Ethan wrapped her in his arms behind her, she leaned into him and whispered, "I want tomorrow and beyond." He held her tighter. The next morning came, and with it, another new beginning for a woman, a boy, and a billionaire who learned what it meant to matter not just to the world, but to each other.